Sunt prieteni Iasminele și astăzi să privesc un video. Nu uitați ca să dați like, share și subscribe și video de astăzi. Și nu uitați ca să vă abonați la Alex Borta. Și să privim My Story. Pauză.
Hi, I'm Evelyn. I used to be a normal kid and used to think of my life as completely ordinary, maybe even borderline boring. The only thing that made my life stand out was the fact that I was the only girl in a family with 5 children. I had 4 younger brothers. But recently, everything changed so much that I feel like I'm living in a TV series full of drama and complications. My dad's new job actually started a life-changing cycle of events. One evening, he just came home from work and said that he was going to sell our house and move to another state. He did it, in a way. Well, you know, with a dramatic
Ei nu au mamă.
sigh and an upset look on his face, so that everybody thought that it was bad news. Mom was setting the table at that moment, and she even dropped a plate on the floor. But Dad turned out to be a bad actor. He suddenly smiled happily and widely and announced that soon we were going to become a really wealthy family. At first, everybody was a little worried about the upcoming changes because it meant that my brothers and I had to switch to new schools and find new friends and stuff, you know.
Ei trebuie ca să găsească noi prieteni.
But as soon as my parents found a place to live, which was actually a huge house with a garden and a swimming pool, all of our worry switched to excitement. Imagine, every one of us would now have their own room with our own personal bathroom. So thank God, no more morning waiting in line for the toilet or fighting over being the first to take a shower. Even better, Dad promised to buy me a car since I was about to become a 16-year-old.
A spus ca să-i cumpere o mașină, că Amuș are 16 ani.
Nothing could be better than this, and it seemed like nothing could even slightly spoil this life-changing period of my life.
Wow,
The only problem with all this was that we only had 2 weeks to pack our stuff, and since
2 săptămâni ca să împachetez lucrurile.
brothers were far from helpful, I asked my best friend Joshua to help me. Joshua and I had been friends since kindergarten.
Best friend, asta înseamnă prieteni buni.
And he was probably the only one here that I was going to miss a lot. So I was happy that we were able to spend a lot of time together while packing. We decided to start from the attic. There was plenty of stuff there. How was one family able to pile up this much stuff? I kept wondering to myself while sorting through old toys, clothes, photos and much more. Suddenly, Josh came across a nice pink box with my baby stuff in it. Every child in our family had a box like this, and I knew perfectly what they usually contained. The first baby blanket, comforters, something like the first tooth box, and so on. Nothing interesting. But I knew Josh was really obsessed with all the baby stuff. He was like, "Oh my God, what tiny shoes you had," and so on. But then he suddenly found one strange thing deep inside the box, which was actually wrapped in a blanket, as if somebody really wanted to hide it. It was a little wrinkled envelope, without a signature or anything, but there was a letter inside, which looked like it was written many years ago. Normally I don't read someone else's correspondence, but this time curiosity got the best of me. Besides, it happened to have been here for my whole life, and nobody had found it before, and that, in and of itself, was amazingly mysterious, you know? It turned out to be a mother-to-daughter letter, full of gentle words of love and adornment, as well as some pieces of advice on wife and husband relationships. I thought this might have been my granny's letter to my mum, but in that case, how did it manage to get into my baby box? By the way, there were no names on it, but everything sounded like the woman who had written it was never going to see her daughter again. It was really strange, though, and touching, so I decided to ask my mum about it. I managed to finally ask later that day when the whole family gathered around the dinner table. At first, neither my mum nor my dad seemed to have a clue about that letter when I mentioned it. But then, when I specified the contents of it, I noticed that the two of them shared a fast glance and tried to sort of drop the subject. This seemed pretty
Ei au vrut ca să schimbeze subiectul.
suspicious, and after dinner, I once again tried to find out at least something about that letter from my parents. But no luck again, because, my brothers were running around all the time and my dad pretended like he and my mum were too busy with moving and packing stuff. So at some point, they sort of escaped from the living room. The mystery surrounding that letter put me on high alert. However, I couldn't really get my parents to stop and talk for the next couple of days. Josh and I together were just like Sherlock and Watson, making assumptions and thinking over different versions of where that letter could have come from. And when we'd finally reached a point where we couldn't make sense of anything and were thinking that this letter must have been written by a mysterious woman who used to live in our house a long time ago and who might have lost her daughter and left her that letter right before she died, I finally decided to demand someone make sense of it and go and get my parents to confess. I will never be able to forget what they told me. It turns out that this letter was addressed to me, and it was written by my mother. Not the one who was sitting next to me, but the one who had actually given birth to me. She was my...
Ea a avut o altă mamă și mama asta o adoptat.
Dad's first love and his first wife. Her name was Alice. She died a couple of months after giving birth to me, suffering from some complications after labor. She knew she wasn't going to make it, so she'd left me this letter, sharing the things she really wanted to tell me someday.
Așa, s-a blocat filmarea.
Someday. Dad missed her very much. He knew it would be really hard for him to raise me on
Așa,
his own,
și s-a
so he hired a
terminat,
nanny for me.
bye!